welcome to another tutorial. My name is Kevin, and I'm also known as AKAAWOL. And in today's video, I'll be showing you a great set of bracelets for you and your best friends. This is totally targeted at the very beginners in making friendship bracelets. We will cover the candy stripe going to the right, as well as the candy stripe that goes to the left. And then we'll put these two knots together to make some variations of the chevron. But first, I'd like to give a shout out to the people from the Elderly Activity Center, where I've been teaching some of these lovely ladies in our community how to knot. I hope this video helps you remember what I've been showing you, and in these times that we're all stuck indoors, that it brings you some happiness. Also, a special thanks to Madam Tio and Mary for getting crafting supplies to my mom to help keep her busy. Thanks. Now let's start these bracelets. So now I'm going to take these 8 skeins and I'm going to cut them into quarters, basically cut it in half and cutting it in half again. And why I typically don't include that into my videos is because no matter how hard I try, this is just simply not glamorous. But from there, once I have it all cut up, I then put them onto these bobbins that I have, and from there I will then proceed to make a kumi. Now, if you're just beginning and you don't have a kumi disc, that's okay. There are many other ways to do a loop, and I will include a link for that down below. But if you're interested in how I started these ones, I have an actual little video for that. So here I go, and I am tying a square knot to the very first 2 strings that cross on the kumi. Now you can go back to those images I had of the kumi disc if you're trying to set it up exactly how I had it. But that's not necessary. You can put it in there pretty much any way you want. You just want 2 to the top, 2 to the bottom, 2 to the right, and 2 to the left. Once I have the strings tied in a knot, I then, try to get them from not tangle up with each other. I bring the 1 string down and 1 string up. Turn it and repeat, and that's all there is to a kumi. It's really simple. The right one on the right comes at top, comes down, and the one on the left bottom goes up, and then you give it a little turn counterclockwise, and you keep repeating. I could have played this at regular speed. However, if I had done that, you would have been looking at about extra 10 minutes or more for this video. So just speeding this up, you get the gist. This is really not difficult if you're interested in doing this. I definitely recommend it. I think it is a really, really nice look. But again, if you're a beginner, there's plenty of other easier ways. You can braid it, you can do whatever. Especially since this requires the minimum is 8 strings. So that's why these bracelets are as big as they are. So just so you kind of have a clue as to why things are the way they are. All right, so kind of getting near the end of this. Again, this was not very difficult. I really have faith that anybody who is watching this would be able to do it if you just get yourself a disc. So kind of misjudged how long it would take. All right, there we go. Now I'm taking the last 2 strings off of it, and I'm going to tie them in a knot. And this is really, this is about not letting it unravel while you're trying to put it onto your clipboard or get ready to actually make your bracelet. So if you don't tie this, it's just like a regular braid. It'll just unravel on you and gets away from you. So this is just a simple trick. And again, it's just the knotting off the first 2 and the last 2. Now I'm pulling all of the strings off of the kumi disc and give it a little tug, and there it is. Now with that, there's 1, and before you know it, there's 2, 3, and 4. Now I did all 4 of these together so that way I could make certain that they were all going to match before I started it on the bracelets. So now I am beginning on our first bracelet here, and I'm going to be very cautious to make sure that as I'm doing this, I'm going to be able to remember how I line these up, because I'm making all of these bracelets to match in the set. So I'm starting with the lightest color and then going to the next one, so it's white, and then it's the lightest yellow, then it's a slightly darker yellow. And I'm just looping it once over the rest of the strings, so that way it just the way it starts, it just comes off with a cleaner start. If this is your first bracelet and you want to skip this, that's completely understandable. This is just how, when you see other people's bracelets and you're like, wow, that looks really nice, this is how they got that effect. So it's really up to you at this point. If you're a beginner, it's not necessary. It just looks better. Once I have all of this side done, I then actually match it with the other side. So I started with the white on the right hand side. I'm going to start again with the white. In this way, it's going to make it so that way when the first set of colors come through, it's going to follow with the same set of colors. So it's going to go from the lightest to the dark, and then again from the lightest to the dark. You can of course change that up. Maybe you want to go from the lightest to the dark, and then to the darkest back to the light. So that's a completely separate look. I say definitely experiment with these things. This is how you learn. Try new things, see what comes of it. But if you're trying to match this exactly, it's just the two whites are at the top point and the two darkest are at the lowest points. Now, mind you, I'm just looping it around what's left. So like there's 4 strands there. Once I loop the lightest one around, then there'll be 3 left. Down to 2, down to 1, and then we can begin actual knotting. So I think I may be talking a little bit too fast, because I obviously have a little bit more time here to kill, but you can see what's happening. It's kind of coming along. Not bad. Last string. Wrap it around. And voila. Now at this point, I want to put the loop together really nice and close, so that way there's no gap when I tie these first 2 white ones to each other. All right. Now I'm just going to kind of hurry through the tying this first ones, but that'll show you what I'm doing. So let me just get this tied. And at this point, all the strings are sort of bunched together. Here's a little trick. You know they're going to go off onto an angle. So if you take and pull the dark string, the last one, off to the side, and where's my clip? It's around here. Hang on. Here we go. Clip that down to your board. It will make finding where the next string is a little bit easier, as well as it starts that first row off really nice and smooth. And we know that if you start it off and everything is got a nice alignment, it makes the next row better, and the row after that, and so on. So this is one way of doing it. Now if you look, I'm making what looks like a figure 4. See, I'll grab that yellow one. I'm going to take the white and go over it like a figure 4, and then reach up through and pull that up. I'll do that 2 times per string, and then go on to the next one. Now, the way I'm holding it there was to show you. Obviously, you will develop how you feel most comfortable as you kind of progress along, and before you know it, you're not even thinking about that shape of a figure 4. You're just tying the knots, and you will continue going to the next string until you get to the end. Now when you get to the end, you have to unclip it, tie the knot, and then you can clip the last one down again, just to kind of hold it off to the side there, keep everything running kind of smooth. After you get several rows in, you'll find that that's no longer necessary. So kind of use your judgment as to when you're like really feel like it's comfortable and it's holding steady. At this point, I'm continuing with that same figure 4, pulling it up through and going from one string to the next. I've sped this up because if I didn't, I've calculated that this whole video would be well over an hour, and I don't think I had enough things to be able to tell you to be able to stretch it out so long. So if you have any questions, please just leave it down in the comments and I will get back with you and try to show you whatever you may have not understood. So at this point you can see I'm creating the 3rd row. I'm just going all the way to the end. I think this is relatively the easiest of the bracelets. This is the one that I learned with. This is really, it's just you're making it go over top of the string that's below and then pulling it up and through. It's called a half hitch if you're trying to find this, you know, somewhere, but it's relatively simple. And then you can see I'm no longer clipping it on the right. No need to, just following the rows down. Once I get to the darkest, it just starts over again. I'll do the light row and continue downwards until I get to the end of this bracelet. So you can kind of see how the lighter colors are slowly moving their way towards the left as these darker colors are coming down. So you can see how it will end up repeating the same pattern once I've gone through this first set. That's kind of important because it's how you can kind of judge how a pattern's going to come out. Like I said, I could have gone light to dark and then dark to light. But once you got the strings in motion, that's it. There's no really changing it up. Okay, bringing this last string across. And now, once I've completed this row, I went ahead and just finished making the whole bracelet myself. It was just a lot easier than having the cameras and stuff rolling. I was able to take it out in the other room. So what I can tell you is that I repeated this pattern until I got all the way down to where it was long enough to wear. And once I got to the length, I then took the white all the way across and kind of dropped it off to the side. Then I brought the yellow along and did not tie it across the white. And then the next yellow did not tie across either of those other two and caused it to taper down so it came into this point. Again, this is really simple. And so we will go on to the next one. Okay, so we're going to speed up the process here because, of course, this part of the starting is exactly like the last one. So if you're kind of lost on how to do this, go back to the first one. And to kind of make things easier, I think what I'm going to do for this video, I've never done this before, is I'm going to create the links down below where if you're on a computer, you'll be able to go back to a specific bracelet. So if you're lost on this part, go back to the first bracelet and replay that, and then you can pause it, you can do whatever, make yourself, it's just a little bit easier. So yeah, that'll be a thing. Now, putting the two pieces together at the top, real nice and close again, and separating out the two whites, right? So now it's really tight because you don't want that gap. That's the big thing, right? You don't want the first knot out the gate is bad. Now I'm going to make a backwards 4, see that? A backwards 4, and then pull it up through the other direction. So in this time, we're going to make a candy stripe, but this time instead of going from the left to right, we're going to go right to left. So that means this instance, we're going to take and clip down the dark string on the other side of the board. See how that works? Now we've done the first white, so that one's done. Now we're going to go to the yellow, which is next to it, and bring that on up. The knot is really basically the same thing as the first one, just tied backwards. It's not very difficult. I have some pictures on another post on my website, AKAAWOL.com. But here you can see again, it's a figure 4, reach up through and pull it through the little hole there. Backwards 4, pull it through, right? And you'll just keep doing that. You just go move on to the next string over, to the next string over, to the next string over. It's the biggest difficulty with all of these things is in the tension. And I have a way that you can actually tell if you're getting the tension correct or not. If it's too loose, when you're finally done with the whole bracelet, the whole thing kind of flops around loosely, then you probably were tying it too loose. If you're tying it too tightly, the problem you'll have is the whole thing will curl. It will try to make, it's not really a cylinder. I'm having a hard time describing what that looks like. It rolls from around in a manner, and that's about your tension. If you get it to lay flat, as you see that mine is laying flat, then you've done it correctly. I mean, that's the greatest judge for these things to whether or not you're getting the tension proper, is if it lays flat. And by all means, practice just these candy stripes first, because by the time you get into doing the chevrons, which we will cover next, it's already balances itself. Part of it wants to curl one direction, other part wants to curl the other, so it will lay flat. It's only in the candy stripe that you get to actually witness whether or not your tension is spot on. So don't just skim over these things because you've already figured out the knots. Use this opportunity to really kind of see how well you're actually forming the knots. Are they going in nice straight rows? Is it nice, neat? You know, this will make a big difference further on down the road. So it's like kind of skipping over the first grade or something. If you didn't learn the letters, reading is going to be a whole lot harder, that kind of thing, right? So, no, I can't emphasize that enough. Take your time, learn the knots, work with it, and it will take you a whole lot further. So, in this instance, you can see everything's just like the first bracelet. Moving onwards, it's going to the left. I've sped this up considerably. Like I said, this is, if I didn't, we would have spent more than an hour. So that would not have been fun, for me at least. But if you guys want longer videos, let me know. Maybe I can toss a couple in somewhere. So yeah, it really just looks so much like the first bracelet. There's not a whole lot different except for the directional thing. That said, between these two knots, when you combine them, you can start to make all kinds of stuff, especially when you start playing with the kind of colors that you're going to use. So learning how to do both of these will actually take you through an endless number of patterns, number of possibilities. So, all right, I went ahead and made it, and so here it is. Take a look. Like I said, it's just the exact opposite direction of the first one. So, all right, let's move on to the next bracelet. Okay, once again, we're making the same start. If you missed this is all done out nice and slow and explained on the first bracelet. So go down into the comment area. There'll be a link for that. Mind you, I'm starting this exactly as I started the other ones, the same exact color combination. And that's why all of these bracelets look so amazing when they're up next to each other, is because all of them followed the same exact sequence for the colors. So it was from light to dark, and then the other side is also light to dark. Now, In this one, again, we're going to bring the ends together and tie the two whites. That'll be the very first knot. But in this one, we're going to use the knot that we first learned, and we're going to take that and go from the center out to the right hand side. Right? So we're going to go across the lighter yellow, and we're just going to take that all the way on down. So again, this is just the figure 4 and then the figure 4 again. This is, so if you've already practiced that very first bracelet, this portion here should come very, very easy to you. If you haven't practiced it, go ahead and stop the video, go back, practice the first one, get the hang of it, get the kinks worked out. It'll make all the rest of your future bracelets much, much easier. So you can see, working my way down, again, just the figure 4. Make sure you do it twice each time. If you accidentally do it 3 times, you will definitely notice something is wrong. When you're first starting out, it's really important to just take it slow, take your time, make sure that you're going all the way across in the right sequence. Being able to kind of relax and go at it while watching TV, that comes with time. Now, from the center, we're going to use the left hand knot to do the left hand side. So it's the backwards 4, that's we're tying it twice, and this is going to cause it to go all the way out to the far left. And if you hadn't guessed, this means that we are working on a chevron. So with the chevron, it's just a matter of you're tying the knot on the right hand side, you're tying it to going to the right. On the left hand side, you're tying it going to the left. This will continue all the way down. You'll just keep repeating the same steps row after row until you get to the end. At the end, what you'll do is the white will come all the way to the end, and then you kind of set them aside. Then the lightest yellow will come to be 1 knot shorter on either side. And that will continue until you get down to the very last string, which will only be able to do 1 knot. So, but you can see in this instance, I didn't try to anchor it when I started. I certainly could have. It would potentially help for people who are really new at this. But I know my tension pretty well, so I didn't have that problem. I also find that if I just went to the left-hand side, I'll do the next row going to the left-hand side, because all those strings have already been sort of untangled or laid, the most recent. So to me, it just makes more sense, and it makes it just ever so slightly faster. And if your goal is to make a lot of bracelets, then that will actually account for something, I guess. So, so yeah, you can see then I did a row to the right. Now I'm going to do the next row to the right. And I will continue that for basically the whole rest of the bracelet. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 full segments. And then after the 5th full segment, I went into tapering it in. Mind you, I didn't double up the string, and it's, so it's a very thin sort of bracelet. So, adjust accordingly to the size, to the wrist that you're trying to fit. Take a look at your friends and see whether or not that's going to actually be long enough. But I suspect, you'll figure out where you kind of want it to end. I suppose I could have, now that I'm kind of judging it to my wrist, I suppose I could have gone an extra segment or so. But I want it to be fairly universal. The braids that come at the end make it so it could fit on somebody with a really, really big wrist, but making it a little bit smaller means it could also fit on somebody with a really small wrist. So you can see, even with it sped up, you can see how I keep alternating the rows and bringing the knots out. Figure 4 to the right and the backwards figure 4 to the left. If you're having trouble with these knots, They are explained in the first two bracelets. So if you skipped ahead and got to here and going, what? Yeah, you need to watch the first two bracelets to get the hang of how to do these knots. It's just easier, and then you'll learn the tension properly, and yeah, it'll just make for better bracelets. So if you have questions regarding this, if you have thoughts on what maybe I didn't answer in the video, mind you, I still have a whole nother bracelet to go, so hang in there. Maybe I'll answer your question before this is up. Hard for me to guess what you guys don't already know. So, and if this is the gals from the classes I teach, I'm sure you remember making these. I'm sure you remember this. Go back to the little part where I started if you're trying to remember how to get it going again. And yeah, I mean, this isn't that difficult. And eventually this will lead to bigger and bigger projects. So kind of looking forward to those, at least when all this whole virus business is over with. Anyways, so after this video ended, I continued on and tied up the rest of the whole bracelet. And I have to say, I think it came out really nice. I think anybody who received this as a gift would be very, very pleased, as would the first two bracelets. They are absolutely gorgeous. All right, so let me know what you think down in the comments, and let's get on to the next one. Okay, so once again, we're going to speed through the whole setup portion of this one. If you needed this, go back to the first video. Sorry for everybody who's actually watched this all the way through, but I suspect there's going to be people who are going to jump around with this thing, so trying to make it fun for them as well. This time we are going to do another chevron, but this one's a little bit more difficult to get started. Once you have it going, it's absolutely easy. In fact, I personally think that this one is a lot easier, and I think that you might actually be able to tell that from the video itself as to how much faster this one actually goes. So what we're doing is I'm going to tie the white one first, as always, right? And then this time I am going to actually take and clip up both sides. And the reason being is this one's a little, like I said, it's a little bit harder to start. So that angle is roughly the angle that the knots will kind of fall into. But now I no longer tie the white ones. I'm going to tie the yellow over top of the white. So I'm on the right hand side tying the left-handed knot to come over that white. Now I go to the left hand side and tie the right-handed knot, the actual figure 4 knot, to come over the white as well and over top of that other yellow. So I'm creating the chevron coming from the outsides to the middle. So like at this point at the beginning, obviously that's a little bit harder, but what you end up with is after you've gotten to your last string, all of the strings are working their ways back to the center again. And that actually turns out a whole lot easier to find which is the next one you're going to work with. So in the long run, it may take you a little bit longer to start it, but overall the bracelet itself will move much, much faster than the other chevron. So at least it does for me. I mean, I guess I'm speaking in really broad terms, and I don't want to, if you find the other one easier or something you would much rather do, by all means, I don't want to discourage you. If anything, I want to, get your imaginations going and work with this stuff. But I have found when it comes to like really big projects, working from the outside in is considerably, considerably easier. So now you can see, so we've gotten first couple rows in, we're taking now this lighter shade of orange. It's going to go across the white, then it goes across the light yellow, then across the darker yellow. There's no easy way to kind of get around the fact that you're going to do one side, then have to just drop those strings and go to the other side. It's just how it works. If you tried to build up one side a bit more, you will kind of get the bracelet to go off in a bit of a lopsided way. So I would definitely not suggest that. But this style of the left side is going to the right and the right side is going to the left continues on for the rest of these rows. I think that kind of covers this one. I mean, I don't want to leave you guys hanging without like knowing how it goes. Oh, you always have to tie the color to itself. That center knot, that's something I did notice when I was teaching at the school. Everybody kind of grasped the concept that they were going across the other colors, but then they kind of would forget to tie it across itself when they get to the center. So I suppose I should mention that as well, right? But again, this bracelet will be just as wide. It will take just the same number of rows to get to the end. Everything basically remains the same. There's the same number of knots, in fact. So the only thing that saves you time is the little things like finding the next one to tie into a knot, or shifting the bracelet up in the clip as you're moving along. That will help out a lot, because the further and further you get away from the clip, the harder it is to keep that same tension you had when it was nice and secure by the clip. So that's something to note for those people who may have been taught to use Scotch tape or something like that. These clips may cost more first time. I mean, I think that big clip at the top may have cost me $4, which I'm sure is probably more than a thing of Scotch tape. But it's going to last me for years and years and years. In fact, I can't even tell you when I bought it. I'm pretty sure it was quite some time ago. So it's not just better for the environment and, you know, economical. It just makes more sense. It's just easier to make the bracelet. Plus, you're not getting any glue stuck on your string, so that's sort of important as well. But you can see, still following the same way. I'm going the backwards 4, moving across from the right to the left till I get to the middle part, then go do the other side. All right, let me speed this up. So my little tutorial here is kind of running into becoming quite a long tutorial, but I guess for 4 bracelets, I guess that should have been expected. Anyways, it continues on in the same fashion that it was before. It's the figure 4 and the backwards figure 4. I've done the kumi. I can't think of anything else I could possibly tell you at this point, other than obviously in a moment here when I get to those last 2 strings, I will unclip those and run them down, and at that point there's plenty on the top clip. I don't have to clip anything in addition, and it just becomes much easier at this point. In fact, I could probably have unclipped the sides even sooner than this, but that's how that went. And you can see from the bracelet itself here in just one moment that it came out really pretty. These are absolutely awesome. This is a chevron as well. It's just pointing downwards. People who are wearing it on the wrist might not even realize or notice that they're actually pointing in other directions, but it is fun when you start to group them together like this. So here we have them all grouped together, and I have to say when it comes to having best friends, nothing really says my best friends quite like everybody having a bracelet to themselves. At the end of all of this was simply 8 skeins of embroidery floss, which is not terribly expensive. And we were able to create something where each person gets something that is unique as themselves and yet symbolizes they are part of a group. So I hope this tutorial was helpful. If there was any unanswered questions you may have, please leave them in the comments and I will try to address it or actually create a whole another tutorial for it. So until next time, don't get your strings in a bunch.